Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Doug Peterson, and I'm very privileged. We're going to move the program around a little bit. We have Senator Amy Klobuchar. I'm going to do an introduction for her so she can give her comments, and I'm going to introduce her, and then I'm going to give you my comments as we move into the symposium. So with that, I would like to introduce Senator Amy Klobuchar, the senior senator from Minnesota. She has earned a reputation as being one of the most effective and result-driven senators in the U.S. Congress, and walks and hands across the aisle to get things done for Minnesota. And, you know, frankly, Minnesota is an agricultural state. It's one of the largest economies in the country. I believe we're sixth in total farm economy, and she has a powerful role in the agricultural seat. Her role in crafting the Farm Bill and the amendments with biodiesel, permanent based energy, permanent disaster relief, and then also opening foreign markets to our farm products. She is a key member of the Minnesota delegation, but not only but that of the House Farm Bill Conference Committee. And that Farm Bill is vital to all of people that live throughout the Midwest and people that farm and ranch in this country. She has actually gone forward and saved, through her efforts, $24 billion with a B dollars in crafting that 2008 Farm Bill, and those provisions are working today. She has been rewarded by many people, conservative and liberal, Democrat, Republican, Farmers Union, Farm Bureau across the aisle. She is voted the Friends of and the Legislator of the Year for agricultural retailers. She has served on the Powerful Commerce Committee, as well as putting together a lot of things on the President's Export Council. A former prosecutor, that's tough, you know. She serves as a Judiciary Antitrust Subcommittee. Now, I don't think I want to be on that committee, but I'm glad she is, okay? She has gained national attention. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to our senior senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, so much, and it is wonderful to be here at St. Thomas. For many years, I was on the advisory committee of the law school, and it's good to see this really groundbreaking conference that you've put together. Thank you for that, and thank you to Father Cherney, as well as Roger Johnson, head of the National Farmers Union, Jim Ennis, and also I know that former Congressman Mingy's involved as well. So I want to thank everyone and let you know that Doug is a great leader. I actually have one of his paintings. You wouldn't maybe take him as an artist, called Dead Fish, hanging in my office. But it looks very cool. It looks better than the name, so you'll have to see it sometime. I'm also glad to be here. This is the first substantive talk I've been able to give since the election. And it's really nice after being up until 3 in the morning and doing a bunch of interviews. I'm one of the only Democrats who could say that yesterday I talked to 6 of my Republican colleagues in the Senate. So that seems to have created a stir, including Senator Cornyn, who's in leadership, and have tried to at least explain that I think there's some incentives here for people to work together. It's been very frustrating for a lot of us in the middle that have wanted to try to get some things done in the last year. I had actually thought I had reached the lowest moment on New Year's Eve during the fiscal cliff vote when we voted until 3 in the morning. And I literally at midnight, that magic moment on New Year's Eve, looked to my right, I saw Mitch McConnell, looked to my left, I saw Harry Reid, every girl's dream on New Year's Eve. And I thought that things actually couldn't get worse, and then we went into the shutdown, and I think you all know how damaging this has been really for our country internationally and on a lot of the issues that you care so much about. We were able to pull off the Farm Bill, which was an amazing feat, and it gives me some hope. But there's just so many things we should be doing internationally, not only on the economic competitive side with exports, but also on the aid side as we see things like what's happening with Ebola, and when we see things like the potential in Africa, which I'm going to get to in a minute, and the potential of working with them on feeding their own people. It's actually quite exciting. I was excited about this for several reasons. Number one, I chaired the National Prayer Breakfast a few years ago, and I'm very involved in the Senate prayer group. I chaired it with Senator Johnny Isakson, and won his heart when I was chairing the Senate prayer breakfast and realized they had cut grits out of the menu every morning. He's a senator from Georgia, and I was successful in getting them back, and now we're best friends. But it is an amazing group. We have about 25 senators every Wednesday morning, different faiths, and every week a different senator talks about something in their life, and what's ever said in that room never leaves that room, and it's one of the few bipartisan ways that people can trust and come together, and I'm continuing to be involved in that group. And then, as Doug mentioned, I'm also on the Senate Agriculture Committee and was involved especially in some of the conservation issues in that bill and getting some extra funding, as well as the nutrition issues. So this is a great thing you're doing. I think you all know Minnesota is not just the land of 10,000 lakes. For those of you who are out of town, we're also the land of 75,000 farms. We have played a major role in making sure that food gets to the rest of the world. We're proud to have been part of the education and the work of Norman Borlaug, who I realized was actually Iowa boasts him as their own when they unveiled the statue and all they talked about was Iowa. There's a new statute for Norman Borlaug at the Capitol and the work he did with the Green Revolution to feed the world. And I was the only one raising my hand saying he actually spent time at the University of Minnesota. But that's just an example of some of the science that we brought the world that's helped to feed the world. We now have today farmers and ranchers facing challenges that really were just as overwhelming as those Borlaug faced, a global population of more than 7 billion people, more than 1 billion people, including 200 million children, going to bed hungry at night, ever-increasing costs that threaten abilities to pass for our farmers here and home their land onto their children, and of course always the challenges of weather and the international export market. So we have many challenges, but I think one of our biggest challenges is needing to produce twice as much food as we do today to feed 9 billion people in 2050. That is a challenge, and I think we all know we just can't do it ourselves in one country, that we have to be able to teach the agriculture techniques that we've learned in other areas, and we need to share our knowledge as well as share our products with the world. I thought I'd first start at home just to give you some updates because, as you know, we still see hunger at home, and one of the main ways as a government, not only with churches and nonprofits that we work to tackle that, is with the SNAP program. And that was kind of a fight this year. If anyone followed it, that would be the food stamp program, the school nutrition, and other things. And we were able to, I think, maintain the program in a strong way. There was some controversy with that. We ended up reaching a compromise where we closed some loopholes. That's what I call them because Minnesota wasn't using them. Most of the majority of the states wasn't using them, and it was a way they were calculating the LIHEAP, which is the home heating assistance with if you gave so much SNAP, you got some benefits from the federal government with LIHEAP, and people were doing things like giving just a little bit of money for food stamps and then using that for LIHEAP. And so we were able to change those standards and basically keep the program intact without putting a bunch of draconian things in there, which was our main goal. And I think that we achieved that goal. In our state, it didn't cost us a cent, any person that was getting those benefits a cent. And so we are going to continue that advocacy. I think you all know during the downturn how important that was. Secondly, in the Farm Bill, a lot of important conservation as well as a safety net that Doug mentioned, some reforms. I've been always involved with the Farmers Union in some of the agriculture reforms on the payment reforms where we had money going to a bunch of people in the 909, what is it? What's the Beverly Hills area code? I don't, what? Thank you. The 90210 area code. It was a late night last night. And places where maybe you don't want that government money going when you know that people in poverty need that money. And so we're able to make some reforms. I would have advocated for more and voted for more, but I think that's important as well as we go forward to continue that work. The conservation piece of the bill, one of the biggest conservation programs that we have in the legislation is the Farm Bill. And we were able to actually strengthen that and make sure it got extended in a way, and we want to continue doing that. I'm not going to get all the details with that, but there's some tricky things as the cost of land goes up that we want to continue having these programs that protect land and incentivize farmers to protect land. We also have the climate change issue. As you know, a recent UN report came out just this week about the increasing problems with climate change. I see that as something that has to be a priority in the coming years. I look back in time and there were some missed opportunities. One was after 9/11. There's missed opportunities on both sides, but one was after 9/11 when I think that President Bush could have focused more on that in terms of the countries that were supplying the terrorists, that we didn't want to be dependent on them for energy, and that we could have done more in our own country in terms of building a grid and doing more to preserve our own resources and make our own energy. Then the second time was the renewable electricity standard. In the summer before President Obama came in, the Congress was one vote short of beating a filibuster for a national renewable electricity standard that I think would have been really helpful. And then the third problem was when the president came in, Obama, I had hoped we would move forward with that renewable electricity standard, which has been really helpful in Minnesota. We're up to 30% renewable electricity for our biggest utility, but instead we went with cap and trade, which has probably one of the worst marketing names in the history of America. People would yell no on trade, no on caps at parades, and no one really understood what it was. And it was during a very difficult time in our economy, and it was unable ultimately to pass the Senate. And so, again, I'm sort of an advocate for trying to get what you can at the time, and instead we ended up with nothing. And so I think now the way I think about the climate change issue is to continue the work with the Environmental Protection Agency and in the Senate and the House to take some steps that are more bipartisan. One of them is a Shaheen-Portman energy bill. Shaheen won her election last night, so now we have that behind us, and I'm hopeful with Rob Portman's help that we will get that done by the end of the year. Energy efficiency is something that people can agree on across the board. It's a simple idea, as I like to say, is we always talk about building a bridge to the next century. That's building a fridge in this century, and that we can just do more on energy efficiency, and also some of the conservation issues with land conservation also tend to be more bipartisan, as well as water and air. So I'm hopeful we can move forward in that vein instead of making the issue as partisan as it's been in recent years. Last thing I want to talk about that is key for this group is food assistance. This is where I think that this group can help the most, and that our religious communities can help the most. As you know, there's a current in Congress that would really cut off a lot of the aid. There are some people that support cutting off all aid to all countries except for Israel, actually, is one support. And of course not supported by the Jewish community, but that's something they always throw out there. And I just think that would be so damaging not only on moral grounds for our country, but also damaging to our relations around the world. There is some exciting changes going on with USAID. Raj Shah, who is a good friend of mine who heads up USAID, has been roundly applauded for some of the changes he has made in working, first of all, with faith groups in a much better way. They actually had him speak at the National Prayer Breakfast a few years ago, and he has looked at this in a different way. Instead of the government working apart from churches and synagogues and mosques, that they're working with faith-based organizations. And that has been a major shift, and it's gained him the support of people like Senator Inhofe of Oklahoma, who was before that not a big fan of USAID. The other major shift, which Cargill and General Mills and other great companies from Minnesota understand, is that he has done a much better job of working with our companies and trying to see how we can harness the kind of research skills and the kind of information they have to better feed the world. In August, I actually went to Africa with 4 other women senators. It was an incredible trip. We were in Senegal for a short time, but mostly we were in Ethiopia and Tanzania. And the entire focus of the trip, which was led by Senator Stabenow, who currently chairs the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, the whole focus of the trip was on food and hunger and how we can better equip Africa in terms of feeding itself. And one of the places we visited was Fafa Baby Foods, which is an example of what I'm talking about, a project where their baby food was not very nutritious at all. And not only that, it was horribly tasted not very good. And so what happened was General Mills Philanthropy, this was not at first investment, sent over their head baker and a team of people that work with them. They've greatly increased the nutritional value of the baby food and also have made it taste better. And so now they have reached a point where they're now going to start investing along with the Clinton Health Initiative and USAID to actually build this into a business that doesn't just furnish all the baby food in Ethiopia, but can be exported through the rest of Africa. And that's the kind of investment. We met with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia that's very exciting. Their agriculture, as probably many of you know who have been there, is not just a century old, it is literally centuries old. And we went out near Axum, hours away from the capital in Ethiopia, and went on a Jeep hours away from that to a town and saw firsthand just how rudimentary it is, but also the Gates Foundation with the World Health Organization and the work that's being done in terms of trying to modernize some of their agriculture. Simple solar panels in these huts make such a difference so the kids can study. Trying to get some kind of equipment in there so that they can have a co-op situation so the farmers can join forces. Women farmers play an incredible role in these places. And we finished the trip up in Rome where we went to the World Food Organization, got to be part of the audience with the Pope and Wednesday in St. Peter's Square. Was an amazing experience, and saw firsthand what the World Food Organization is dealing with now, where nearly all of the major sort of hotspot shortages are not always about weather, which we know is a problem, but they're about government dysfunction and conflict when you look at what's going on with Sudan or what's happening in Somalia and other places. So I really came out of the trip, one, impressed by what our international aid workers are doing, and two, even more committed to the work that we need to do at home to make sure not only our products but our expertise is getting to these small farmers, because this is not just like you're in the middle of a desert. Ethiopia is beautiful. There's trees growing everywhere because they started this reforestation project. There is huge fertile land that can be used to feed the people of this country, and they just need that extra nudge and help, and they need the message in this country that we all work together. And I often think when I debate some of my friends on this issue that they would meet the farmer that we met named Miriam, who's a woman, a widow, with her 3 children living in this tiny hut that was pitch dark in the middle of the afternoon. But she said that because she had been a leader in their community and she knew the English word leader, and what that meant was that through the Gates Foundation, she was working to bring maternity care to her neighbors. And when someone had a baby, she had a chart up, and every time one of the 10 huts that she had a jurisdiction over had a baby, she put this little baby, taped up a baby on that house, and to make sure that that child would come in and get their vaccines and other things. And when we looked at her and said, well, what's your biggest challenge? This is a woman that walks an hour and a half every day to get water, that has 3 kids on her own, that just has a few rows of crops that she's really proud of, that has a solar panel that she just got a month ago that gives her light so her kids can get electricity. And she said, I have no challenges. I am a leader. That's what she said. And when you see these kinds of inspirations, you think, why can't we get our act together here to share some of what we have? Not just the riches, but also just the volunteer, the people, the spirit, the expertise. And I hope that's, as you go forward with this major conference going on in Rome that we heard about when we were in Rome, and I had dinner with our ambassador over there and talked about, there's a lot of interest, and I know there's some of our businesses are contributing and involved in it as well. I just think this is such an exciting opportunity for our country to show leadership in a different way than we have been in the last few years. And we've seen it on the nonprofit side with President Bush and President Clinton working together. We have seen it with the Gates Foundation, but we want to figure out a way to make it in a very positive for our government to be involved. And we're going to need your inspiration and your advocacy to do that. So thank you very much, and have a great conference.
Wonderful.